Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Mrs. Zars. I know. Okay.
Yeah,
I know it's gonna take some explaining. Um,
because you had to look up how to pronounce that.
yeah, well, because it kind of, to me, it could also look like Zarvies, and I didn't want to say it incorrectly. So Mrs. Zarves, it's been so long since I've heard the name. She is the teacher on the 19th floor of Wayside School, in the book Sideways Stories from Wayside School. And there is no 19th floor, so there is no Mrs. Zarves. And so when when the kids talk about her in the book, there is no 19th floor. The builders forgot to put it in, so it goes from 18 to 20. But there's still a teacher that teaches on the 19th floor, but she doesn't exist either. Did you not read Sideways Stories from Wayside School?
No.
Oh man. Okay, so before we get started, here's the premise. So it's a hilarious book of little short stories of the students and the teachers that go and work at the school. Originally, the school was supposed to be one story with 100 classrooms, but the architect got the blueprint sideways, and so he made a 100-story building with one classroom on each floor. And so
What is it called again?
it's called Sideways Stories from Wayside School. I can't believe you've never heard of it. It was my favorite book as a kid. It's hilarious. There's a kid in one of the classes that every day something happens and he has to go home before noon, and so he doesn't know what happens at school after lunch. It's just silly. They're silly stories and they're very funny.
That looks familiar. I looked up one of the covers. That looks familiar. I don't think I ever read them though.
Oh man, it was the best. There was a chapter where they installed elevators, and to make it easier, and to prevent overcrowding, they had one elevator that only went up and one elevator that only went down. And so the chapter ends is that it worked perfectly one time.
That's so funny. It's funny you would bring that up because before I got set up, I was watching a video. I was watching a video on YouTube. I've been watching a lot of these recently. I don't know why. Of people doing side by side comparisons of like biopics, like when they recreate something.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the side by side comparison of Live Aid, the Bohemian Rhapsody versus the original. And I'm sitting there watching it, and like Ashley's gathering up her stuff to hang out in the bedroom while we do this. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what's crazy? And she goes, what? I was like, our parents lived at the same time as Freddie Mercury and probably got to see this for real. And she was like, yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, right? I'm like, yeah, it's really fucking crazy. And then this is a good segue, because then I was like, yeah, that's how Jeremy and I feel about David Lynch. At least we got to live in the same time as David Lynch.
That's right. And Tom Hardy. It's the same thing. We're living in the same time as greatness. Yeah. So he's listening.
Before we get into the episode, so dude, I want you to give your 3-page paper review on Bring Her Back.
Yeah. Kale came to visit, and so did my mom this weekend. And Kale and I snuck away on Sunday, and we went to go see Bring Her Back. Man, that movie's crazy, man. The same guys who did Talk to Me. I would say that if you loved Talk to Me, you're gonna love Bring Her Back. Okay, similar themes, similar tone. I would say the only difference is that Bring Her Back is a little bit more violent. There were
Mm-hmm.
a couple of scenes that Kayla and I were like, oh, oh man, you know, um,
You know,
sort of
and
squirmed a little.
how do you pronounce her last name? It's like
I
Philippou.
don't know how to pronounce her last
They're
name.
Australian,
Yeah,
so um, well, and you know what's so crazy is so I haven't seen Talk to Me yet. I plan to.
you should.
Um, what's crazy is these guys started out on YouTube, making horror short films and insane stunt videos, and now they're directing movies.
Yeah,
And from what I gather, so an independent company in Australia produced Talk to Me, and then A24 bought the distribution rights. But I guess with the success of that, A24 was like, "Hey, what do y'all want to do next? Like, we got you covered." Because
yeah. It
from
was
what I understand, yeah, Bring Her Back is like their full like A24 film.
yeah, it has that feeling to it. But again, it was very reminiscent of like how Talk to Me also felt. I will say that I'm almost 100% positive this movie is the reason why Emily Mortimer is in Paddington 3. Um,
Oh, that's right. I forgot Sally Hawkins is in this.
yeah. Um, and so, like, good. Because this movie's awesome. Um,
Imagine a what if scenario where Emily Mortimer had agreed to do Bring Her Back and Sally Hawkins did Paddington 3.
man, I don't know. I don't know. Um, Either way, probably. It would have been fine, I suppose. But yeah, Sally Hawkins is amazing. This is the most I've ever heard her talk um, in this movie because the other ones were just Paddington 1 and 2 and Shape of Water. They're the only things I know her from.
Oh, and you haven't seen Wonka either,
No.
you uncultured swine.
Is she in that?
Yeah, she's his mom.
I did not.
Dude, makes you cry every time, man.
She's too young to have a son as old as Timothy Chalamet.
Well, it's because she's dead. She died in a horrible mom dying accident. You know
This
those.
happens.
Yeah.
But I guess overall, I would say yes, absolutely go see Bring Her Back. It's amazing. I really did enjoy it. I'll need to see it again before I make a ruling on which one's better. If you know, it's arbitrary, but if Talk to Me is better or whatever. But I really enjoyed it. And again, there were parts of it that made me squirm a little. The sound design is crazy. Uh, yeah, you gotta see Bring Her Back. It's great.
Yeah, I also love the brothers are keeping up with 3 words in their title. Talk to Me, Bring Her Back. Um, I don't know why. I aesthetically find that pleasing, but yeah, man, I really want to see it. Like I said, I'll need to watch Talk to Me first. I've heard Talk to Me is
It's great.
crazy, but good. Yeah, unfortunately, like we were kind of talking about off mic, I didn't go see anything new. I did watch a new anime called Sakamoto Days. Um, and then I watched and completed the newest season of Doctor Who, which I was a little upset by just because I didn't want Shuti to leave the role. I thought he was fantastic, but I mean, I guess we'll see what happens in. I think they're going on a hiatus to like 2027.
It's a while.
So yeah, so I guess we'll see what happens in 2027 with Billy Piper. Spoilers
But
for any of
whoa,
our for
whoa.
any of our Doctor Who fans out there. Dude, could you imagine if like suddenly we got like an influx of Doctor Who fans? And they're like, oh, and they're just like, fucking spoilers.
Billy Piper,
No,
she was with the guy who is in The Leftovers, yeah?
Chris Eccleston, yes.
Yes.
And then she got carried over to David Tennant's run for one season, and then she's been kind of like sprinkled around throughout the years. So this will, I mean, again, it'll be interesting.
Oh, so this is like the first time since
technically since the 50th anniversary special This is the first time Billie Piper's been back to the Hooniverse. Ugh. I'm gonna be honest, as a Doctor Who fan, I even hate that. But I mean, again, we'll see what happens in 2027. But that being said,
Yeah.
so Jeremy, should I remind everyone what we're talking about today?
Please.
Yes. So today, I gave a little bit of tease earlier about David Lynch. Today, we were talking about his 1986 neo-noir film, Blue Velvet. I feel like this is one, much like, I think, like the assassination of Jesse James, it's kind of like a lore within the show, because I feel like we've teased potentially talking about this movie for like years.
Yeah. It was also runner up for potential reservations logo art.
Okay, but who would have been who? Would I have you? Would you have been Jeffrey and I would have been Dorothy, or the other way around?
Let's see who's usually on what side. I guess I would be Jeffrey. Yeah, the right side.
I think that would have hammered home to my wife and probably your wife that we are gay together.
They just don't get it. They don't understand.
I'm
jealous.
But yeah, so this was a first watch for me. I know it was not a first watch for you, but ever since you kind of welcomed me into the cult of Lynch, I've wanted to see all his films, and this one, I'm gonna be honest, I really enjoyed. I'm gonna get that out of the way now. Versus, what did we do the last time? Wild at Heart, right?
Yeah, that's the last one we did.
Where Wild of Heart, I was kind of like, I don't know. This one I really enjoyed. It felt more palatable than his other films. Like, we'll get into it, but there's not as many, I felt, Lynchian things in it. Like, it felt like the surrealism was dialed down to like 20%. As where, like, again, I'll use Wild at Heart, for example. The surrealism was dialed up to maybe like a 50 or 60%. This one just felt very, I don't want to use the word tame, because I don't think because it definitely was not tame.
Yeah.
But
it was sort of like, okay, it's a little more grounded in reality, kind of, sort of. I would say it is more digestible for those who, like, would have never saw Eraserhead, and who maybe would have seen The Elephant Man, and are sort of like, okay, like, The Elephant Man was pretty good. Eraserhead, that's too weird for me. This one, it's like, it's weird, yes, but it's still kind of a mystery. And but it is this neo-noir mystery as opposed to like a supernatural or surrealist mystery. Like
Mulholland Drive. Yeah.
And what would be Twin Peaks a few years after this. So yeah, I mean, it is palatable. Before we get too far into it, why don't you hit him with the what the hell this movie's even about?
Yes. So Blue Velvet. Styles. Jesus Christ. I've been doing that all day today, mixing up words. Stars Kyle MacLachlan, who is, I mean, essentially David Lynch's muse. I mean, without Kyle, I don't think we would have really gotten Twin Peaks. Anyway, Kyle plays Jeffrey, who has come back to his hometown of Lumberton, right? Lumberton?
Mm-hmm.
Such. There's our first Lynchian thing right there. His father got in a very odd accident and is hospital bound. So Jeffrey comes home to help out around the house with his mom and his aunt and help out at the family hardware store. While heading back from checking on his father back to his house, he finds a severed ear in an open field. And this is where our mystery kind of begins. He kind of does the right thing. I mean, you're not supposed to pick up evidence, but he does take it to the police because he's relatively kind of, can't think of the word, friendly with one of the detectives, and tells him like, hey, I found this ear, thought I should bring it to you. And again, this is what's kind of starts this mystery where he meets Detective Williams's daughter, played by Laura Dern, Sandy, which shout out to Laura Dern. Always shout out to Laura Dern. And Sandy kind of reveals a little bit more of the mystery of how she heard her father talking, and a lounge singer named Dorothy might potentially be involved. She just heard the word murder, and maybe Dorothy may not be the safest person to be around. Jeffrey kind of takes that as a challenge and decides to exclusively investigate Dorothy. Ultimately leading to a very intense scene, which we will definitely talk about, where we get a lot of the mystery answered, or at least what's going on, which is Dorothy's husband and son have been kidnapped by a, I guess, drug lord, Frank Booth, played very terrifyingly by the wonderful Dennis Hopper. And Jeffrey is being pled to by Sandy. Like, okay, now just go to the police. You have enough. And in his defense, a lot of this evidence that he's uncovered is inexcusable or dismissible because he can't prove it. Even leading to a very intense sexual and physical encounter with Dorothy. Jeffrey just can't let it go. Until finally Frank Booth and his gang beat Jeffrey, and this is what finally gets Jeffrey to break and tell Detective Williams, this is what I've been doing. I'll stop if we can take this guy down. They end Frank's operation. Jeffrey manages to kill Frank in a shootout, and Jeffrey and Sandy live happily ever after, and Dorothy is reunited with her son. Good triumphs over evil. The end. I yada yada over a lot, but I know we're going to get into it. Yeah, so going back to the palatable part, the story, you're right, is very grounded in this mystery.
Well, and that's so. Yes, I guess there should be an asterisk because yes, it's grounded for David Lynch. I would say if you're going in a typical like erotic thriller murder mystery, like that's not what you're going to get. Because you're going to get, I mean, you get a sort of bumbling detective who's sort of out of his element. In this case, it's Jeffrey, who has no business investigating anything besides just curious. You know, you have the victim, you have our villain, but there's something off about everybody. You know, Dorothy has completely succumbed to the fact that she is this sexual slave for Frank. So much so that she even welcomes the violence when she's not with Frank. And then Frank, oh my god, like I think I mentioned it in our tease for it, but Frank is one of the most terrifying villains in film history because of his erratic unpredictable, explosive behavior. I mean, you just have no idea what he's going to do. You know.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I did read that he was on like the top 200 like most terrifying film villains ever.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
I saw something too today that someone like speculated on. He said, "Oh, he's inhaling helium." I go, "No, he's not. You don't know what he's like."
and, I actually read a little bit of that today. The idea was helium,
Okay.
but Dennis Hopper suggested it should be something else.
Yeah.
Because it would enhance the sexual experience. And David Lynch was just kind of like, I mean, okay, I guess. Although Dennis Hopper later revealed that like it would have been a little bit more ridiculous had he just stuck with it being helium.
Of course.
Um,
If it was helium, his voice would be different. So you know what I mean? That would be just so
yeah,
silly. But so I like thinking that we don't know what it is.
yeah. So do I, because I don't think they ever say it.
No,
He's
they
just
don't.
inhaling things.
You just have
So
mass in a tube that you can't see where it goes, and just starts huffing, and it's that is surreal, right? The way he
mhm.
speaks is off. The language he uses is gratuitous and over the top and pervasive and unnecessary. Lynch is good at that. Um, there are lots of characters in a lot of his movies that speak in a very peculiar way. Dennis Hopper in this film is no exception. Um, he uses the word fuck just so much, and it's so unnecessary, you know? Um, and again, it's so pervasive that it's sort of borderlining on the surreal, on the, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, nobody talks like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I read today that pretty much any time Dennis Hopper has a line, fuck is in the sentence somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, I also read that apparently David Lynch wouldn't say it on set. Like
I read that
when
too.
like I guess when he was like giving notes to Dennis Hopper, he'd be like, yeah, so that word. And Dennis Hopper was like, yeah, he'll write it, but he won't say it. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, and I read that Lynch was like, well, no, I just didn't want to make the room more tense. Like, I wanted to just like keep it level. Like, if I also said it, then like things would get a little more amped up, and it's like we need to just keep it where we're at.
Yeah, especially considering that clip of him losing his mind during Twin Peaks The Return,
Yeah,
because that like what was it like that PA or DP, someone was telling him like they have enough shots and he just loses it. So I mean, yeah, Lynch for sure says fuck,
yeah.
but
Again,
yeah,
it's tense enough, especially with Hopper's performance. Like, we don't need to
yeah, yeah,
amp it up. Like, he doesn't need Lynch's help for that.
yeah.
But yeah.
Um,
Also, in terms of the surreal, I would say the most Lynchian we get. Not just in the opening when we are in Lumberton and we see, the Norman Rockwell aesthetic suburb, and then it
mhm,
dives down to the literal dirt and underground of suburbia, and we see those bugs, right? Those beetles.
mhm.
That was pretty Lynchian. The sound design was pretty Lynchian. And of course, Ben and the whole brothel sequence.
Yeah,
Pretty surreal. Um,
yeah,
Ben is probably like that's the highlight for me of this movie. Is Ben lip syncing to Roy Orbison? Um, you can tell that this was sort of like, to me, it feels like a trial run for in terms of aesthetic and character design. It's sort of like this is what Robert Blake will be in Lost Highway, because his face is overly pale, right?
mhm,
You can tell that it's pale due to makeup. Like, he's wearing makeup, you can tell that. And it just reminded me so much of Robert Blake in Lost Highway. And this
Well, I
is
was going to say, and we also got that shot of the highway speeding by,
yeah.
So yeah, I was like, I could see where Lynch may have come up with the idea for Lost Highway,
Yeah, or
which
the aesthetic or how it looks. Yeah.
which sidebar. After I finished the movie, I was like, man, how good is Lost Highway? I don't know why. I truly don't know why. Like, because once the movie was over, I was like, man, that was so good. But how good is Lost Highway?
There's something about the set design too. In Dorothy's apartment, it reminded me so much of like Diane's place in
Mm.
Reality of Mulholland Drive at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Arquette's place in Lost Highway. Like,
yeah,
there's something about that aesthetic or that set design that really does feel Lynchian because it's darker because the walls are always a darker color, so the light's not bouncing off them as much.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought the exact same thing because I'm like, yeah, this is more like this is what starts this aesthetic for him, forever.
Yeah, because I know we talked about it in our teas last week, but 2 years before this was his adaptation of Dune, which of course is completely different, but it's also because like what we've talked about before, that there's two kinds of Lynches. There's David Lynch, and then there's adaptation Lynch, where adaptations he tends to take a little bit more reverence with because it's not his work. Dune, his version of Dune, I'm going to be real. Even though I love Lynch, I've never finished it. Because unfortunately, Denis Villeneuve has spoiled me.
Yeah, of course.
With what that movie could be. And the fact that Lynch was pretty much told to cram this massive book into one movie.
Yeah.
It was never going to work.
Yeah.
Thank God. But yeah,
thank God for Dune.
Yeah.
Because Dune gave us Kyle MacLachlan. And
exactly.
That's and then Blue Velvet is what's going to give us Twin Peaks, and then blah, on and on and on and on, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched. This was one of the films that here recently rarely I get to do, which is I get to watch a clip of Siskel and Ebert talking about the movie. This one I got to. They disagreed. Shocker. But I thought it was really interesting their sort of different takes on it, because where Gene Siskel was like, whoa, like this movie is tremendous, it's so raw and interesting, and it's shining a light on the seedy underbelly of what goes behind the these locked doors of these suburban households, and what really goes on behind the scenes, and blah blah blah. And he liked the sort of the over the top Frank Booth and the whole mystery of it all, and this kid who's in over his head and with the situation. And Roger Ebert, he liked the movie, okay, I guess, but really he was like, it just made me feel bad. It made me feel bad for Isabella Rossellini, most of all. And he's like, he said, I felt that Lynch is subjecting these actors to these horrible situations, in that he's doing this to the actors. Because that's how it feels. I think I don't agree with that, but I think what Ebert is saying is that the story and the performances are so raw that it feels like Lynch is putting these actors through the ringer, and really he isn't, because like Siskel was saying, Rossellini signed on to do this movie. She read the script. She agreed to it. Like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, she's not being made to do anything.
Yeah.
It's just that the story is so visceral and so unforgiving in its violence that, yeah, of course you're going to feel that way. And I think Ebert is unknowingly paying the movie a tremendous compliment, which is, you know, this movie makes you feel that way because the performances are so good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can see what he's saying, but yeah, you're right. Because I did read today that several actors that Lynch had in mind turned it down. Like Val Kilmer, for instance, was supposed to be Jeffrey, and he turned it down because, and I quote, "Rest in peace, King. It's too pornographic." Um,
Fair.
Molly Ringwald was originally supposed to be Sandy,
So interesting.
but her mom said hell no. So Laura Dern got it because I'm sure Bruce Dern was like,
And Diane Ladd, we're like, oh shit.
yeah. But it is interesting because but uh, Siskel's right that these actors read the script, they knew what they were getting into. Like, yes, there are, and we've talked about them, where directors really break down an actor for a scene. I mean, most famously, like we've talked about, is Shelley Duvall on The Shining.
Actually, I want to, if we're talking about this, I want to take a moment to highlight my hatred for David O. Russell, if you don't mind.
Okay.
He treats his actors like complete garbage. He's garbage. He has subjected his actors to many a just berating of insults and slander and just hostile work environments. Lily Tomlin being one of them, and the most famous one probably. Um, so yeah, I would say that yes, Shelley Duvall, obviously, and Kubrick, but most of all, and most importantly, in this day and age, David O. Russell, he can go fuck himself forever. All right.
Yeah, but everything I've seen of Lynch and watched of interviews is he actually has like a really good dialogue with his actors and like what he wants out of the scene and what they're comfortable with. And like watching Kyle MacLachlan talk about him, or Laura Dern. There was an interview that Laura Dern gave, I think, where she talked about being uncomfortable, I think with one of the sex scenes in Wild at Heart. And she said that like he took her aside and was like, tried to help, like not try to talk at her, but be like, what can I do? What can we do to make you less uncomfortable? Because this is what the scene required. And she was like, she said that like she's never been treated like that before on the set, because he really cared about what she thought. And so I could see where Ebert would feel like that, but again, like you just said of Siskel's point, it's because the performances are so raw, and like you really believe Isabella as Dorothy, that she's so numb to what has happened in her life that she does welcome the pain and welcome being treated like an object. And that it takes this bumbling in over his head kid to save her from all this.
Yeah, you know, I know exactly probably the scenes that Ebert was referring to, and he did mention one, and it was when Dorothy is in Jeffrey's front yard,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "I just felt so bad," right? And like, all right, relax. But um, but I get it because she does look completely broken, disheveled, and she's giving a phenomenal performance.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I'm sure is the scene where we meet Frank in the first place. Um,
Yeah.
it goes on for a long time, longer than you expect. There's very few cuts, and it is so uncomfortable. Especially because we are in Jeffrey's shoes, being a voyeur, and we're just watching this happen. We can't do anything to stop it, and we do feel horrible for Dorothy. But I think even at that point we understood that Dorothy she can't refuse anything Frank says.
Mm-hmm.
She is his, sexual slave until she's able to assure her husband and son safety. Um,
Yeah.
which I also appreciated. We didn't get too into that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I will say I kind of forgot that was a subplot.
Yeah.
Um, like of course there's the scene with Ben where you hear Dorothy talking to Don, her son, or no, not Don, um, or not her son, her husband.
Mhm.
I don't remember the son's name.
I don't either.
Um, but then like I forgot again, and then we see her husband dead
Yeah,
towards the end of the movie, and I was like, oh right,
that was his ear. That's right. That's what started all of this. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I think it's because I feel like Lynch uses that as just like the catalyst to the mystery, but the rest of the mystery is uncovering who is Frank Booth, why is he doing this to this woman, and how is Jeffrey gonna save the day?
yeah. Or like it's so unexpected. We're introduced to Lumberton as this safe haven. Um, this picturesque place. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what Lynch loves to do, and this is what really sets the tone for the rest of his career. Is you know things aren't always what they seem, and here's what really goes on behind closed doors, or here's if you think this is so nice and so perfect, I'm going to show you that maybe it isn't. And how about let's take a look at ourselves as a society, and on the outside it may look like this, but really on the inside this is really what's going on. And I love that, and that of course is the entirety of Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
you just love to see the beginning of something great, and this is that beginning. This is what's going to define him, really. And I think because of this movie, of course, is how people were so willing to accept and embrace Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
I think because of Blue Velvet and its popularity, because again, it is just this much more digestible. you know,
Well, and piggybacking on that, especially with Twin Peaks, I mean, then Lynch had Mark Frost to help make it a little bit more digestible. Um, until fucking CBS made them answer that who killed Laura Palmer. Jesus Christ.
at least
There's
we
no
got some
changing the
cool
past.
Leland scenes, I guess.
Yeah, that's I mean that's pretty cool, I guess. But you're right. Because you could kind of see sort of the beginnings of what would become Twin Peaks with Blue Velvet. We have Kyle MacLachlan leading this sort of investigation. Granted, Dale Cooper is the exact opposite of Jeffrey Beaumont. Um, Dale Cooper is more confident. He knows what he's doing, but also he's a little bit more boyish and a little bit more, wouldn't use the word whimsical, but I guess curious. Like in the pilot, what kind of trees are these?
I would even say that Dale Cooper is borderline asexual, where where Jeffrey is definitely not.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Where Cooper is invested in the case, and nothing's going to distract me from the case. Jeffrey's very much. I mean, like, beautiful woman is offering sex. I
Yeah,
think I'm going to take that.
he gets himself romantically entangled um,
Yeah.
in this.
He's got that cool pirate earring too. I
That's a
mean,
cool earring. Don't think I didn't notice the earring.
it took me a minute. I'm like, is it just a lighting trick? I'm like, why is his ear? Why does there keep like being like a little like glint? I was like, oh, it's because he's got fucking hoop earring. That's what's up. Uh, but yeah, and then of course the mystery element, which obviously defined Twin Peaks. But I think what I really like about this is, unlike Twin Peaks, where we got to, I mean, I feel like this is an unfair thing to say, but of course, because Twin Peaks was a show and this is a movie, I liked that we didn't get to spend a lot of time understanding the intricacies of Lumberton,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
the ins and outs. Like Twin Peaks, of course, we're stuck in the town, so we have to learn
Yeah.
how the town operates, the hierarchy within the town and things like that.
Yeah.
And again, that I love Twin Peaks, and that works for Twin Peaks because it's a show. But I really love that Lynch was like, yeah, we're not going to really. This is Lumberton. There you go. That's all you need to know.
Yeah,
And that's it.
there are some little quirky things, like you have two guys running the register at the hardware store because one of them is blind, um, which which is
Yeah.
quirky, right? I mean, it's one of those Lynchian things that it just is what it is, and it's um, you sort of see it and it's sort of whimsical and sort of neat and sort of like, oh, that's odd. Um,
Yeah.
it's just this much out of place, you know.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, it is just slightly off. And again, I think kind of what we've been saying, that's what makes this a little bit more palatable, because other Lynch's films and ones that we talked about on the show, like Eraserhead, for example,
Mhm.
it's not just slightly off, it's very off from the real world. Lost Highway is another one that is slightly off, and then Wild at Heart is really off. It's like Lynch decides to pick how weird he wants this world to be.
Yeah.
You know. And again, I think that's what makes this movie so good, is that it is just slightly tweaked a little bit, but it's not too unrealistic.
Yeah,
Or
they're just like, okay, so like Frank Booth is he is like, it's hard to explain. He's just over the top. He's so erratic and unpredictable. He is sadistic. He's an animal. Um, and that's just that to me. That's most of what makes this movie so Lynchian is Frank, and of course the brothel scene in particular. But like when he takes Jeffrey to wherever they were, and he just puts on that lipstick,
yeah,
and and then starts like kissing Jeffrey, and then threatens him. Like it's so bizarre. Like Frank is out of his mind,
yeah,
with so much like he is out of his mind with so much emotion. Like when Sam, it's Sam, right? I said it 17. Ben, Jesus,
Ben,
17 times earlier. When Ben is lip syncing Roy Orbison, which hopefully will end the episode with that song.
Oh, for sure.
In the audio version. So sorry if you're watching this on YouTube. But when he's lip syncing, like he's really into it. He's singing the lyrics. In fact, he'll keep bringing up the lyrics throughout the film,
Mm-hmm.
especially in that scene with the lipstick. So bizarre. But then he has to like stop the music because it's too much. Like he is just so overrun with God knows what, because he's angry, he's emotional about the song, he's also like extremely horny to the point where it's like he's like a cartoon, right? I mean, it's like he just has such a this evil sexual desire, um, and very strange fantasies and taboos as well, because he, he when he gets really, into his fantasy and in his lust with Dorothy, he refers to her as mommy, and he's the baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. When we wrapped last week, I was telling Ashley what we were going to do this week, and I've been trying to get her to watch anything Lynch with me, just because I think she would appreciate the mystery element. Like I've been trying so hard to get her to watch Twin Peaks with me, because I really think she would really enjoy the mystery element of it. And I was like, hey, do you want to watch Blue Velvet with me? And like I read her the back of my Criterion, and she was like, yeah, maybe. She did not.
Shocker.
But as soon as we see Frank, I'm like, thank God. Oh fuck. I was like, I'm glad she's sitting this one out.
I had forgotten about the way he speaks, right? And he is so much louder than everyone else, at least on my TV, because like I had to keep turning it down when Frank would talk, because I had Maya sleeping on my shoulder, and I'm like, oh, that's too loud. Frank is.
Yeah, I was also doing the same. I was like turning the TV down more, but then I'd be like, I can't hear anything else, and I'd have to turn it back up. Yeah, yeah, man. I read that this revitalized Dennis Hopper's career.
Interesting.
Which is kind of crazy considering it's Dennis Hopper. But I mean, then again, the same thing happened with Travolta in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
so
I think after he was in 2 Seconds of Apocalypse Now, I don't know how his career was after that. I guess it must have been pretty stale. It's almost a decade's worth of not doing much. Maybe I'm just tough. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
in the 80s.
Let's see. Yeah, because let's see. Yeah, he was in Rumblefish, which that was pretty good. I mean, but that was 83.
Okay.
Then he did Blue Velvet. So after Blue Velvet, he did Hosier's. A lot of these I'm not even recognizing as like. Oh, that's right. He was also in the Super Mario Brothers movie in '93. But he was in True Romance.
Okay.
Boiling Point, Speed, Waterworld, Basquiat.
Well, Dennis Hopper was 20 years prior to this. He was part of the new Hollywood counterculture movement. He wrote Easy Rider, if I'm not mistaken. And that's sort of what, that was one of the things that kicked off the new Hollywood movement, that, Bonnie and Clyde, Five Easy Pieces, things like that. And he was part of that, a very integral part of that. And so, like, I can see where, like, time goes on. It's been like 2 decades. The new Hollywood shit that doesn't really matter anymore to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then you say yes to the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yes. But then you sign on to do this insane thing and knock it out of the park. I mean, I've never been more uncomfortable. And more, he is so scary. because of his unpredictability and and his erratic behavior. I think that he plays it so well, and I wish I knew what was Hopper and what was Lynch. Is Dennis Hopper interpreting this character in such a different way that Lynch expected? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think so. That's something else I read today, that apparently a lot of people passed
Really?
on
That makes sense.
on playing Frank Booth, but apparently Hopper was like, I have to play this.
Yeah.
To quote what I read is, he said, I have to play Frank. I am Frank.
That's scary. Don't say.
Which is very scary. I was like, Jesus Christ, Dennis Hopper. I guess he felt some sort of kinship to the writing. I really hope that's not the case either.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that it seemed like he really jumped at the chance to be a part of this.
I mean, he did used to do a lot of drugs, so
that's true.
That might
which is probably why he knew that one drug instead of helium would be better for a sexual experience. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime also when I see Isabella Rossellini, I get really excited because I go, oh, it's Dorothy. She was in a couple of movies. I remember she was in Enemy, and I was really excited when she was in a scene in Enemy. That was cool. She might have also. Am I remembering this correctly? That she was in Cosmopolis? I'm thinking of someone else. I think another French woman.
I'm looking at some of her filmography, and I don't see
Cosmopolis.
Cosmopolis.
It's the other.
She was in Spaceman, that movie with Adam Sandler, and
I didn't see
that. Carey Mulligan. Mom said it was fine, but also she likes the Sandman when he's being haha silly funny, not haha I'm sad.
They're both haha though, apparently, so that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I do find it interesting that, when I think of Lynch, I don't think of him as a director who gets, I guess, big name actors. Like, using the film we're talking about right now as an example of Dennis Hopper, I would say of the entire cast, Dennis Hopper is the most famous actor on that cast list.
By far.
And maybe second place would be Brad Dourif. Yeah. When I saw his name come up, I was like, holy Jesus. Fucking Brad Dourif.
Also Jack Nance. He is part of the
crew. That's right.
Yeah.
Dude, when I saw Jack Nance also, I was like, fuck yeah, bro. I'm like, of course Jack Nance has to be here.
Of course.
And he has like 3 lines the whole fucking movie.
That's it.
I'm Paul. I'm just kind of like,
yeah. Then Brad Dourif is he's so odd. I mean, the whole thing is odd, and the crew is weird, and it reminded me a little bit of, and I'm sure it's a coincidence. Just because I think that they're similar doesn't mean that they took inspiration from it. But Jackie Boy's crew in Sin City, it reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah. Isn't that Benicio del Toro?
It is.
It's been a while since I've seen Sin City.
Oh man. Get on it.
Dude, fucking Clive Owen didn't want to come back for the sequel. Son of a bitch.
He was doing the Nick, is he?
I guess. Okay. I feel it's getting close to the wrap up, but I do just want to gush real quick on Kyle MacLachlan just for a second. So like I mentioned earlier, they did Dune together. And I love that movie kind of sparked this friendship, this sort of lifelong friendship. Because like you said, without Kyle MacLachlan in Dune, we probably wouldn't have gotten to Kyle MacLachlan in Blue Velvet. Then we would have never gotten to Kyle MacLachlan in Twin Peaks. Something else I forgot to mention. So with the whole Val Kilmer thing, apparently Val Kilmer was also up for Dune.
Really?
And lost it to Kyle MacLachlan.
Damn it.
But I think Kyle's such a fascinating actor in a good way, because he, especially with Lynch, because it seems like he knows what Lynch wants out of him for the role and for the scene. Like when he and Dorothy, have sex, she wants him to hit him. She wants her to hit him and her to hit her. Jesus Christ.
Nope. Still not right.
Yeah. Anyway, you can tell that, of course, Jeffrey doesn't want to hurt Dorothy, but you can tell that he also kind of wants to have sex with her, and she's asking to be hit, and so he begrudgingly does.
Yeah.
And you can see Kyle really like channeling this sort of, I want sex, but I don't want to hurt this woman,
Yeah.
And I just think Kyle is such a great actor. And again, I think he and Lynch forming this lifelong friendship. I mean, no one can beat Dale Cooper. It's always Kyle MacLachlan.
Of course.
But yeah, I wanted to gush a little bit over Kyle MacLachlan. And I feel like a fake fan a little bit. The first thing I ever saw him in was How I Met Your Mother, where he plays a recurring character called the Captain.
Oh, that's
who's obsessed with boats. And
I remember that.
Yeah. And he showed up in How I Met Your Father, the Hilary Duff version, as the Captain. But yeah, that was the first thing I'd ever seen him in. And then I saw Twin Peaks and I was like, oh my God, like he can do so much more.
I wanted to mention real fast the symbolism of the bugs and the robin.
Okay, good. Yes. Yeah.
So Laura Dern, Sandy, she tells Jeffrey about this dream that she had and how it had to do with these robins and how they sort of represented salvation, whatever. And so at the very end of the film, when Jeffrey even points out the robin that's in the tree, right? Obviously because, Sandy had told him about that dream, and so he goes, oh, a robin, right? But the robin is eating a beetle, one of the beetles from the beginning of the film that represented the seedy underbelly of suburbia. And so I liked that symbolism of, sort of like salvation triumphing over evil, or good versus evil, or whatever. That that Robin, or the good and the righteous, triumphed over this evil, sadistic underbelly of, this everyday Norman Rockwell type life. Yeah, I really like that. That was neat. That was I like something like
that. Well, I mean, and it wouldn't be a Lynch film if we did have some symbolism there.
Also, did they? Her name is Dorothy, so obviously, did they mention that in Lynch Oz or Oz Lynch? Did they talk about Blue Velvet?
You know what? It's been so long since I've seen it, and I own it. And I'm going to be real. Half of the movie, I just felt like they were kind of like just theorizing things.
Okay.
and then we got to the David Lowry part, and I was like, oh, I'm all in, because David wasn't trying to theorize anything of what, or like grasp at straws for Lynch. It was just more like, well, this is what it made me feel, kind of thing, and that's why I was like, oh, I'm really paying attention now to fucking Lowry.
Yeah.
So I should rewatch it and actually pay attention. But yeah, after like the second talking head of them just like theorizing things, I was like, I get it. You don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Maybe, probably. I'm sure there is.
I'm
I mean,
sure.
as we've discussed, Lynch has some weird obsession with the Wizard of Oz. So
His favorite movie.
Yeah. Well, that being said, buddy, are you ready to wrap up?
I am. Yeah, obviously it's a masterpiece. I would say that if you like, for me, Lynch's he has two masterpieces, and that's Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks: The Return. Those are, to me, quintessential Lynch through and through. Both of those. I would say that if you didn't like either of those, I would be okay if you said that Blue Velvet's his masterpiece.
No, I do agree with Twin Peaks. We have sort of had a disagreement. I think Lost Highway,
Yeah, that's
is definitely.
Yeah,
I fucking love Lost Highway. Fucking Bill Pullman, dude. But Blue Velvet, man, Blue Velvet, definitely, like I said, where I did like Wild at Heart. It definitely is not my favorite Lynch film.
Yeah.
I really, really love Blue Velvet. And again, it makes me wonder if my dad actually saw this movie when he purchased me the Criterion. If not, I don't think he knew what he was buying me, or maybe he did. Dad, I know you're behind on some episodes, but maybe you did know what you were buying me. But still, Dad, thank you for getting me that. We can now take another Lynch film off the list. Now we just got Elephant Man, Inland Empire, and A Straight Story, I think.
Yeah.
Am I missing one?
I can't think of. Look at myself. I don't. I don't know. Maybe not.
Because we did Eraserhead. We did Wild at Heart. We did Mulholland Drive. We did Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah.
So, and I guess technically Dune.
Oh,
too.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's what I was. No, there's one more. Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. But that being said, buddy, what are we talking about next week? Which I already know because you told me a week in advance.
I couldn't wait to tell you because I got the idea and I got so excited.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna go ahead and say this now. I'm really excited. I really wanted to see this movie, and now I'm gonna get to finally see it.
It's one of the few movies that I took Haley to see, and she was like, "Oh, that was fun. I like." I was like,
which I was gonna say, which, as we know, on the Haley scale, that means it was really good.
Oh, really good. And this movie gets a lot of negative attention, which I think is really interesting. It's not as highly rated as I feel like it should be. I think, I don't know what people expected or whatever, but I think it's one of his best movies. Anyway, that being said, next week we are discussing Damien Chazelle's deep dive into 1920s cinema, transferring to sound filmmaking with Babylon. And I'm excited. I can't wait. This movie does something so incredible that I can't wait to talk about. And I would describe this movie as Singing in the Rain for nihilists. Because it's a very similar premise to Singing in the Rain. you haven't seen it. Singing in the Rain is about these, troupe of actors who are silent film royalty. And once The Jazz Singer comes out in 1927, it's kind of a cliche now, but in film depicting this time period, but people rush to see The Jazz Singer that can't believe sound has made it into film, and now they're like, we need to do the same. And it's about that transition and how difficult it is for those who are silent film royalty to make that transition and to adapt to this new technology. It ruined people's careers. So,
yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was first kind of starting my cinephile journey, Mom explaining to me the history of Hollywood and the history of silent films and then into talkies, and how, talkies, yes, progressed the time, but it ruined a lot of silent actors' careers because, shout out to our Sunset Boulevard episode. And also shout out a little bit to our Chaplin episode, because they bring it up in the Chaplin film about how, when talkies became a thing, a lot of these silent film actors didn't have, I guess, the voice that people were expecting, even though, but also they weren't giving interviews back then either, so it wasn't televised. But yeah, I'm really excited. I remember hearing about Babylon and seeing the cast list: Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, Tobey Maguire. I was like, dude, I'm all in. Let's go. And then COVID delayed it, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it came out in 2022. So yeah, this is after COVID. I was in Lubbock. I don't know what we were doing in Lubbock. I was with Haley. We were, I guess, visiting Dad. I guess.
You would have had to be.
Had to be. And I was like, I really want to see this movie. Let's go to the Alamo Drafthouse. Let's go see it. Is that okay? And she was like, yeah. And I go, it's 3 hours. She goes, I already said fine, so I guess we're going.
That's when you're supposed to tell her it's 3 hours while you, once you were there.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it's 3 hours.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and of course I've seen the memes that have come out from the movie, specifically that of Tobey Maguire's character. And of course we've already talked about another Damien Chazelle movie on the show, Whiplash. So I'm really excited, man. I really wanted to see this movie because, again, like you said, it's literally about Hollywood history.
It's a fictional,
and such a fascinating, yeah, it's such a fascinating time in Hollywood history.
I think originally, and I think Emma Stone was going to play Claire Bow, if I'm not mistaken. COVID ruins everything, and then he decided, you know what, let's do fictionalized versions of people and let's just go, right? Like, Brad Pitt's character is kind of Errol Flynn, I
was going to say, yeah.
Fairbanks, I should say. They're the Robin Hoods. I always get them confused.
Just remember, Kevin Kline was Douglas Fairbanks in Chaplin.
Yeah.
So that'll help you out.
Yeah. So he's basically Douglas Fairbanks. Margot Robbie's kind of Clara Bow, and it's just a fascinating look at that time, and the way Chazelle presents the complete lawlessness and just raw beauty of making silent film to the rigid, organized, structured way of making sound film is just incredible. It plays a lot like the editing of Whiplash in some of those scenes.
Nice.
Yeah. And
nice.
I'm hoping you'll catch the surprise appearance of a director that we have spoken about before on the show a couple of times. He is in the movie playing a director, so I'll be on the lookout for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited, man. Like I said, I really wanted to see this when it came out. Now that I finally have an excuse to watch it.
Yeah.
So, cool, man. Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this episode on Blue Velvet, and we will see you next week for Babylon.